Did you know that Raiders of the Lost Ark wasn't Karen Allen's first time stealing the screen from Hollywood's leading men? Before she was Marion Ravenwood, punching Nazis, drinking Sherpas under the table, and trading barbs with Indiana Jones, she was already a rising star. From college dropout to cult icon, Karen Allen carved her path not through fame-hungry ambition, but through grounded, captivating performances that left a lasting impression on audiences who knew she was something special. But after a string of iconic roles in the 80s, she began to drift from the spotlight. So what happened? Today we're looking back at her rise, her defining roles, and what Karen Allen has been doing since Hollywood stopped calling quite so often. Let's fade to black. Karen Allen was born on October 5th, 1951 in Carrollton, Illinois, but she didn't stay there long. Her father worked for the FBI, and her family moved frequently, eventually settling in Washington, D.C. Karen described herself as a quiet, observant child, always reading, always watching. She was drawn to storytelling, not so much for the spotlight, but for the ability to inhabit other lives. She enrolled at the University of Maryland and dropped out in the early 70s and drifted, working odd jobs, hitchhiking across the country, soaking in experience. Eventually, she found herself in New York City, studying at the Lee Strasberg Theatre Institute. That's where it clicked. Her naturalism, her grounded presence, and her striking eyes all made her stand out. She wasn't a conventional Hollywood type, and that worked in her favour. Before her film career took off, she made her stage debut in the late 70s and appeared in a number of experimental theatre productions. That same honesty and emotional clarity she brought to the stage would soon translate perfectly to the screen. Her training was rooted in method acting, but Allen had a gentleness to her work, a subtle emotional intelligence that made every character feel lived in. She wasn't trying to be a star, she was trying to be truthful though. That commitment would land her one of the most iconic roles in blockbuster history. Karen Allen's film debut came in 1978 with National Lampoon's Animal House, the anarchic, beer-soaked comedy that became a massive cultural touchstone. In a movie overflowing with cartoonish energy and exaggerated personalities, Allen's Katie stood out as something real. She played the smart, grounded girlfriend of Boone, caught between frat house chaos and actual adulthood. It would have been easy for her to disappear in the background, but Allen's poise and subtlety gave the character real weight. Animal House became one of the highest grossing comedies of all time, and while it didn't revolve around her, she was impossible to forget. But it was in 1981 that Karen Allen became movie legend. Steven Spielberg cast her as Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and from the moment she appeared on screen, downing shots in a smoky Nepalese bar, she turned what could have been a throwaway damsel role into a powerhouse performance. Marion was funny, she was furious, she was vulnerable but resilient, and in Allen's hands she never felt like a stock character. The chemistry between her and Harrison Ford was electric, equal parts romantic tension and mutual exasperation. She didn't orbit Indiana Jones, she challenged him, and audiences loved her for it. The film was a colossal hit, grossing over $300 million and redefining the modern action-adventure genre. Allen was suddenly a household name. Yet, in the wake of Raiders, she didn't jump headfirst into the studio system. While many would have leveraged that success into a blockbuster-heavy career, Allen remained picky. She focused on roles that intrigued her rather than ones that simply paid the bills. That meant her next films didn't always make headlines, but they revealed a pattern that would define her career. She was always chasing character, not clout. After Raiders of the Lost Ark, Karen Allen had Hollywood at her feet, but rather than chase the next franchise or sign a multi-picture deal, she turned inward, focusing on work that intrigued her, whether or not it came with box office guarantees. In 1984, she starred opposite Jeff Bridges in Starman, John Carpenter's haunting, romantic sci-fi story about an alien who takes on the appearance of a woman's dead husband. But Allen brought a deep emotional resonance to her performance. Her character, Jenny Hayden, wasn't just a grieving widow. She was a woman forced to confront loss, wonder, and the unknown all at once. Allen conveyed all of it with quiet dignity and heartbreak. She grounded the film's stranger elements with a deeply human core. Critics praised her work, and while Starman wasn't a smash hit, it became a beloved cult favourite and one of the most affecting performances in her career. A few years later, she returned to something lighter, but no less memorable. In 1988's Scrooged, the modern, irreverent take on A Christmas Carol starring Bill Murray, Allen played Claire Phillips, the kind-hearted ex-girlfriend of Murray's cynical TV executive. Her warmth stood in sharp contrast to the film's biting satire, and again, like in Raiders, she served as the emotional compass of the story. While Allen rarely took leading roles in major studio films during this era, she continued working steadily, often appearing in character-driven dramas, offbeat comedies that allowed her to stretch. Films like Until September in 1984 and The Glass Menagerie in 1987 showcased her classical training and stage sensibility. But by the late 80s, Allen's name wasn't appearing in as many bold headlines. They were increasingly obsessed with celebrity culture and tabloid stardom. That quiet retreat made her seem, to many, like she'd vanished. In truth, she hadn't disappeared, she'd just chosen to step out of the race. Karen Allen's path wasn't about visibility, it was about intention, and for the second time in her life, she was about to shift direction. As the 1990s rolled in, Karen Allen made a conscious decision to pull back from the film industry. It wasn't a dramatic exit, and it wasn't the result of scandal, box office disappointment, or a fading star. It was something much simpler. She wanted a different kind of life. In 1990, she gave birth to her son, Nicholas, and everything shifted. Allen has said in interviews that she never wanted to be the kind of parent who was gone for months at a time, raising a child through phone calls and hotel visits. So she moved to the Berkshires in western Massachusetts, far from the frenzy of Los Angeles or New York, and focused on being a mother. She didn't stop acting entirely. She still appeared in occasional TV movies and independent films, but she turned down bigger projects that would have taken her away from home. Her roles during this time, in films like The Turning in 1992 or In the Bedroom in 2001, were chosen with care. She also returned to the stage, where she could control her schedule and perform in a more intimate, grounded environment. Allen's move wasn't just geographical, it was philosophical. She opened a textile company, Karen Allen Fiber Arts, in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where she designed and sold her own knitwear. The work was tactile, slow, and deeply personal, far removed from the hyper-mediated world of film premieres and red carpets. She described it as another form of storytelling, one with its own rhythm and rewards. This quieter chapter of her life didn't make headlines, but it gave her something much more valuable: autonomy. In an industry notorious for chewing people up and spitting them out, Karen Allen simply walked away, and she did it without bitterness. She taught, she created, and she raised her son away from the chaos. And to the people who wondered whatever happened to her, the truth is, she was never really gone. She just changed direction. In 2008, almost 3 decades after she first punched Indiana Jones in the face, Karen Allen made a triumphant return to the big screen in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. For fans of the original trilogy, her appearance was one of the film's most exciting and emotional moments. There she was, Marion Ravenwood, just as fierce, funny, and radiant as ever. Time hadn't dulled her edge. Allen's return was widely praised. She brought warmth and gravitas to a film that, at times, leaned heavily on spectacle. She made Crystal Skull feel like a true continuation of the story, not just a reboot or nostalgia trip. Marion had evolved, and so had Allen. She wasn't just Indy's old flame anymore. She was the mother of his child, a steady counterbalance to his aging bravado. Their dynamic had matured into something more grounded and tender, and that emotional through line gave the film much-needed heart. In interviews around the release, Allen spoke about how surreal it felt to step back into a role that had defined her career, and how grateful she was to revisit Marion as a more fully fleshed-out woman. It wasn't about recreating the past, it was about honouring it and moving forward. And for younger audiences who may never have seen Raiders in the theatre, Crystal Skull was an introduction to just how much Karen Allen brought to the screen, that effortless blend of strength and soul, charm and integrity. Her reappearance wasn't a career reboot. It didn't mark a full return to the Hollywood hustle, but it was a reminder. Karen Allen was never just the girl from Raiders. She was Marion, and no one else could have played her quite like that. After Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Karen Allen didn't seize the moment to relaunch herself into the mainstream. She didn't line up a blockbuster or try to cash in on renewed attention. Instead, true to form, she returned to doing what she loved: small, personal projects with creative heart. In the 2010s, she appeared in a string of independent films, including White Irish Drinkers in 2010, Year by the Sea in 2016, and Colwell in 2019. The latter, a quiet, meditative film about a rural postmaster facing forced retirement, earned her some of the best reviews of her career. Alan's performance was introspective and deeply lived in, proof that subtlety, restraint, and maturity can be just as powerful as big, flashy roles. She also continued working in theatre, both on stage and behind the scenes. In 2012, she made her directorial debut with a production of Frankie and Johnny in the Claire de Lune at the Berkshire Theatre Group. Her passion for stagecraft, rooted in her earliest training, never left her, and in many ways it became a creative home base. Alan also began teaching acting and directing, sharing her experience with the next generation of performers. Her approach was grounded, thoughtful, and focused, less on fame and more on the actual craft of storytelling. In interviews, she's often expressed how rewarding it is to mentor young artists who are just beginning to find their voices. And through it all, she's remained anchored in Massachusetts, where she still runs Karen Allen Fiber Arts, her cozy, hands-on knitwear boutique. It's not a celebrity side hustle, it's a genuine passion, and a reflection of her ethos. Work with your hands, make something real, and put your heart into it. Alan's later career hasn't been marked by headlines or high-profile roles, but she's steadily built a body of work that's rich in texture, character, and care. Her life choices defied the usual Hollywood trajectory, but they've allowed her to evolve as both an artist and as a person. In 2023, she even made a brief return in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, offering a poignant bookend to the indie Marion love story. It was a quiet, touching moment that reminded audiences just how essential her presence had been all along. Karen Allen never built her career on hype. She simply showed up, delivered unforgettable performances, and let her work speak for itself. Whether she was stealing scenes in blockbusters or quietly shining in indie dramas, she brought something rare: authenticity, intelligence, and soul. She's lived a creative life on her own terms, stepping away from Hollywood when it no longer fit, and finding fulfillment in the work that did. New videos drop every Tuesday and Saturday, so if this one hit the right nostalgia nerve, make sure to stick around, and let me know in the comments who do you want to see next in the series. As ever, thank you, and I really look forward to seeing you all in the next one.